Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Your Brains Coach podcast. My name is Angela Sharina. I'm your host. I'm your brains coach, and just someone with a lot of passion for helping you guys to learn all the brain tools, all the leading research from neuroscience field applied to your life to feel, look, and do your absolute best. Guys, today I'm very excited because we are having a guest on Your Brains Coach podcast. We're having Friederike Fabricius. She is the author of the book that just came out this October, The Brain-Friendly Workplace, Why Talented People Quit and How to Get Them to Stay. And on today's podcast, guys, you're going to learn this emerging science or knowledge about the diversity of our brains, our different neurosignatures, neurodiversity, these terms that you probably haven't heard of. It will help you to understand your your unique brain better and how to make your brain shine, how to unlock and make use of all of your talents. And if you are a founder, if you're a business owner, if you are a leader, it will help you to understand how to create environments and workplaces and how to lead your people to a situation where everyone can deliver their best performance. Because as it turns out, our brains are very different, and what can be a thriving work environment for one brain time, for one neurosignature, can be a complete disaster for another brain time and another neurosignature, right? Or you might be a solopreneur and you have your own gig, but then you're trying to conform to some productivity principles that actually do not work for you, right? And you're always wondering, like, what am I missing here? Why am I still struggling with my work performance? And then perhaps, why am I still struggling in life because of not understanding how your brain thrives and works and how to make use of your very unique set of talents. So with Friederike Fabricius, we're gonna talk about how to create the best performing team and how having like-minded people on the team or all around you might not be the best idea if you are interested in the best solutions, in the best insight to solve a specific problem, right? We're going to talk about a better way to do group brainstorming, to come up with as many novel solutions and ideas as possible, instead of kind of figuring out one major theory and the rest of the group nodding their heads, agreeing with the main theory with a few variations, right? We're going to talk about neuro gap at workplace and in our world in general, how very often we as leaders, whether that's family unit or work unit, we create those environments that allow only certain specific brain, usually our own, that allows that brain type to thrive, and for the rest it's kind of really a miss. We're going to talk about outcome culture and hustle culture and why it's important to learn how to set up work environment for people to help them to thrive based on the outcomes they produce, not the hours they put in or the schedule they work on, right? Outcomes are more important, not the hustle, not the hours when people work. How to create that, how to accommodate for that experience at workplace. Maybe, if you are an employee, bring it to your boss and say, hey, I can deliver much more value if you allow me to work like that. We're also going to talk about how stress can be a true performance amplifier, but only if we create different stress levels for different people. And for different people, different kinds of stress levels indeed can unlock their talents. We're gonna talk about this, the most productive state of our mind, of our brain, flow state, and how to simplify it and how to get into it consistently and often with the right mix of fun, fear, and focus. The right mix that is, again, unique for every brain, for every neurosignature. By the way, this word neurosignature, guys, you'll understand what it is and what four brain chemicals will define what's your brain type or neurosignature and how where you can thrive with that specific neurosignature. Then of course we're gonna talk about the body, and I'm gonna give you some quotes from our podcast. The brain and the body are connected. When you take care of your body, you take care of your brain. When you boost your body, you boost your brain. Friederike on this podcast will give you a short, simple daily checklist of what to do every day to make sure that you are boosting your body the right way to unlock your best brain's performance. And we'll also talk about how we can create workplaces that nudges towards these behaviors that are great for the body and great for the brain. And also, guys, the last but not least, we're going to talk about chocolate, my favorite brain food. And Friederike has a note about chocolate in both of your books, and that made me very happy. And so we're gonna chat a little bit about why chocolate is so amazing and what kind of chocolate is the best for the brain. And we'll end up our podcast episode by talking about how taking care of your brain truly enhances your life on all levels. Better work performance, and of course better earnings because of that, better business, finding your passion, and living your life well and meaningfully. So as you can hear from my tone of voice and just excitement and all the topics that we're gonna cover, that this podcast you don't want to miss for sure. So please, without further ado, tune in, get all the value. If you have any questions, reach out to me, to Friederike. All the links how to connect to Friederike and her work you'll find in the show notes. And of course, guys, share this podcast episode so more people learn how to optimize their brain, their companies, our workplace and life to have the best brains, the best brain performance, unlock our talents, and have the best life experience. Please enjoy and get a better brain performance. Friederike Fabricius, thank you so much for joining me today on your Brains Coach podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. So excited about that.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.
When I first read your book, that's how I that's how I got introduced to your work. The first book I read by you was The Leading Brain, Neuroscience Hacks to Work Smarter, Better, Happier. I think that was the subtitle. Immediately I thought, I need to interview the author. There are so many takeaways that I believe everyone needs to know, not just for work, but for life that, is happier and more fulfilling. And then I learned that you just released another book, this brain-friendly workplace. And how, the subtitle is why talented people quit and how to get them to stay. And there I got even more insights. And I'm so, happy to have the opportunity for interviewing you today. So thank you for coming to the show and your work that I believe will transform not just the world of work, but also our personal lives, because I think, I believe too, that they're not separated, they're all in the same, our life. Friederike, I first want to start with this concept that you introduced in the brain-friendly workplace that I think not so many people are familiar with. Neurodiversity. Can you please talk more about that? Like neurodiversity, neurosignature. We hear a lot about diversity these days, but I learned that It's not necessarily the kind of diversity that we need most in our workplaces and life.
Well, when I think of diversity, I think of deep diversity. So diversity that goes beyond gender and your skin color and your age and all of these, let's say, more visible external factors. I think we're missing a piece of the puzzle here. We are thinking only about those criteria when in reality we should also be thinking about how different brains work and how different people like to work. And that's why I wrote my book, because I felt that we're falling short with the diversity agenda. We're not really thinking about how to put teams together that work well together because they bring in different insights. And in order to really boost productivity and innovation and well-being, we need to understand that brains are different and we need to bring in those different brains and make them shine rather than always having that culture of conformity where everybody operates according to the same rules.
Yeah, I think it's, sometimes it's so easy for all of us to talk about diversity and like, yeah, I embrace diversity, but then somebody starts making plans in a different way, or go about, finishing projects in a different way, or collaborations. And we're like, it's wrong, it doesn't feel right. Because we believe that how our brain works, that's just how everyone's brains work, right? Can you expand more on like what are ways that in which our brains are different? Like, I read about those 4 chemicals that shape the way our brain works and interacts with reality, and how they, how you might notice them in workplace and in life, and what to do maybe to get better at interacting with people with different signatures, maybe a little bit like of everything, if you can. I know it's a lot.
Of course. So people have different neurosignatures. And what that means is our personality is shaped by 4 brain systems: the dopamine system, the serotonin system, the estrogen, and the testosterone system. And we all have all 4 of them, but there are different mixes, so to say, or they are active to different degrees. And so someone who has an active dopamine system or a dopamine neurosignature will be very curious, very energetic, always trying out new things, having high energy levels, and being a bit risk-taking, so to say. While somebody who has more of a serotonin neurosignature is going to be going more into detail, loves a more structured routine, doesn't like a lot of change, and is going to be more cautious rather than jumping at risk. So they, in a sense, those skills are complementary. And I think that's what nature wants us to do. There's a reason why we're not all the same. Because if we were all the same, we can't come up with so many innovative solutions. And the same is true with estrogen and testosterone. So people with an active testosterone system, they are bold. They thrive in technology, math, music. Think of somebody who works in tech, or many leaders have that neurosignature. And somebody with a more of an estrogen neurosignature is going to have more lateral thinking, more intuition, more of a people focus, more empathy. So in a sense, that's, those belong together in a sense, because we need all of those skills in the workplace, and we need different people with different skills to solve tricky problems. So I think when we understand that people have those different strengths, we can design workplaces that welcome all kinds of neurosignatures rather than one of them.
Yeah, and it's such a great point, I think, about that each neurotype, each neurosignature, they have their place and advantages when you have them on your team, right? Like my personal example, for example, I think I'm very close to you in your signature. I'm, high in dopamine, high in estrogen, according, to self-analysis. And one thing I'm really driven to novelty and starting projects, right? Always like ready to take action. But then I noticed that I do lack that more of the attention to detail. And it's harder for me to do stuff that is, I guess, I consider to be boring. And then for that, I need to hire contractors, right? So they fill in those gaps. And when, for example, I start doing some writing and write books, so they can help me with the editing, and then, with some stuff like marketing or like different things, right? But the point is, each one of us has kind of like perfect fit for certain tasks and modalities of work. And it usually happens that way, that each project, be that, at workplace or in love or in life or a creative project, each project has like these different modalities that are better handled by people with different signatures, right?
Exactly. And that's where a diverse team comes in, because then when you really, in every team, you should have somebody who loves the task that you hate. That's how you're really productive together. Not when everybody does everything, but when you have people who can do the things where you have your weaknesses. So rather than spending your time working on your weaknesses, you should be able to work with someone who can compensate for them. And that's when you really get a high performing team.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I also worked with a few startups, and it's funny, because they always try to, especially at the beginning, get people with like-minded people on the team, right? Like we all the same, and we think the same way, and we act the same way. This creating this monoculture, mono culture. I don't know if there is such a term, but I think that's where actually the mistake is, right? To handle different situations that will come up, especially for a startup. Like we really need to have this diversity of thinking, not just diversity of race, gender, etc., age.
Yeah. And it's so, if you think about it, there's this huge pressure to conform. So people want to fit in. People don't want to fight with others. People want to be in harmony with other people. And what this leads to is groupthink. And groupthink limits our ability to be high performing. Groupthink limit our ability to really come up with solutions, because all we think about is how can we please the boss, and not so much how can we find the best solution. So even in bigger companies and in small ones, there's always that pressure to conform, to fit in. It's human nature. And I think you need some hacks in order to counterbalance that, to make sure that you don't have that monoculture of thought.
Exactly, and maybe can you expand more on the difference between group think and group flow? Because again, when I work with people, I find that people believe that it's kind of the same, meaning that in order to hit the group flow, to get into, those deeper insights collectively and breakthroughs, people need to be, well, on the same page, right? And all conform to the same, ideas or principles or the way of doing things. And I believe actually that's the opposite. That's can you expand on that? Like how people can differentiate between group think and group flow, and how they can, get into flow and not group think to create the best possible solutions that represent all the, possible diversity or maybe more complex picture of reality.
Yeah. So, my final chapter is called Group Flow, the antidote to group think. And what I'm saying there is that a high performing team will get into group flow. So what you will experience is that you together achieve higher levels of performance than you would ever achieve alone. And it's a great feeling. It's when you really work together and have higher output as a team. So it's like 1 + 1 is 3. Rather than 1 + 1 is 2. So you really sync up, your brains sync up, and you create something truly amazing. That's group flow. That's what companies really aspire to. While groupthink is the reality of it in most places. And what happens there is that people subconsciously added their thoughts and their opinions in order to fit in. And we have that all over the place. It starts in school, it starts in kindergarten. It's just human nature. And I think companies need systems in place in order to prevent that from happening. Because sometimes superficially, it will look like harmony and great collaboration. But in reality, it's just a bunch of people clapping each other on the back, agreeing on everything and not really producing anything novel or innovative. And so there are a couple of things you can do. So, for example, when I brainstorm with my team, I always ask everyone to first brainstorm alone. It's such a simple hack, but we get much better output this way, because the moment I say what I think we should do, everybody's going to be like, oh, that's a great idea. Great, let's do that. And then the discussion is over. While if I ask people, the individual people, to come up with their ideas, and then we bring them into the meeting, and then based on that, we brainstorm together, we have so much more interesting answers, and they will come up with angles that I ignored and didn't think of. And so that's truly, it's such a simple thing. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't take a lot of time. I don't need to buy anything. It's just a simple matter of first brainstorming alone before you brainstorm together.
Yeah.
So it's really a matter of changing the way you work together as a group. So you control for groupthink, and so that you get those insights from everybody. That's why you hire people, because they have great ideas, and then we stifle with them with groupthink. So I personally feel that in our society, there's a lot of groupthink. The media push for groupthink. Politicians push for groupthink in their party. Like, there's just such a narrow corridor of how people are thinking about certain topics, and we are depriving ourselves from so much brilliance and so many great solutions because people don't dare to think outside the box. And I think that's just dangerous, because we should be open-minded, welcoming different ideas, staying, open to what other people have to say.
Yeah, it's definitely, a brilliant hack, just to allow people to brainstorm alone first and then bring it together, without, I guess, editing it based on what other maybe more influential people think in the group, right? Or people who you admire. I think also, here what comes in place is, and you wrote about that, I believe, in The Leading Brain, is this imposter syndrome also. Like when you hear somebody else, especially maybe someone higher in the hierarchy, or, someone you respect, saying something different from what you thought, you might edit it because you're like, oh, that's probably wrong. We all have this imposter syndrome, thinking that we are not enough or not smart enough. I personally think, that might happen in different situations. And also, you mentioned an amazing thing, that the best solutions, you were talking about how in parties or, different companies that happens groupthink. I believe that the best solutions are never in the head on one person. And that's why this, true diversity is so important. It's like we need to accept that no one person has the best solution in their head. Usually the best solution is accumulation of all these different opinions and
Exactly.
ideas.
And that's why I believe in diversity of thought and deep diversity. So I think there's really a missed business case in that diversity puzzle. We're just so, of course, it's important to, have equality and to respect all people and all, and to reduce bias. But then we're not even thinking about how to combine different brains and how to set up the work environment so that different people can work well. So I think it's really, if companies start implementing this, that would just get so much better results, so much more innovation, so much, more profit. And so I think it's like a hidden resource that people haven't tapped into yet.
Yeah, I go ahead.
No, that's what I think
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I just wanted, to say that companies talk a lot about, especially in technology, about like, let's step into all the resources, not meaning so much people's resources, but resources like on earth or technology, innovation. But yeah, they don't often talk about that. I truly believe that actually the most underused resource is human potential, just because we set up environment that way that a lot of people do not thrive in those, environments that we created. And maybe I'd like to transition to work environment and how you wrote, in the brain friendly workplace, how there are different ways of helping people to thrive, helping people with different signatures to thrive, how to set up work environment, right? Like, for example, some of the things, outcome-based, not hustle-based environment, and then helping people to choose, and making it okay, making it, encouraging that people choose their own schedule or their own space. Like, do they want to more be in a closed space or open space, right? Or maybe switch between those. Like, can you talk a little bit more about that? How companies, smaller and bigger companies, and even individuals can set up their work environment so they thrive? Like, how to accommodate different people, perhaps.
Yeah, so let's start with the neuro gap. So in my book, I'm highlighting something that I call the neuro gap. And basically, what it's all about is the fact that most people at the top of organizations have a high dopamine testosterone neurosignature. So they're highly stress resistant, very competitive. They really, love change, and they create a kind of environment that works for people similar to themselves. It's not intentional. I think this happens automatically. We all think what works for us works for the others. And then they alienate other neurosignatures, not intentionally, but it just happens because when you set up a high stress environment, you're going to alienate those neurosignatures that thrive on lower stress levels. So I think there are a couple of things you can do to correct that without having to know each and every individual's neurosignature. So first of all, rather than measuring time spent at the workplace, measure the outcome. Just define what the person is supposed to achieve and then check, did it happen or did it not happen? I don't care if you work on the weekend, if you work at night, during the day, morning, evening, like it shouldn't matter. The only thing that should matter is, do you add value? Check the box, yes or no, right? And of course, there are some people who are in between. So, it should be outcome based. So I'm saying we should switch from hustle culture to outcome culture. You can be very busy and still not be productive.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt. And you mentioned this, shallow work, deep work, that, people can be checking emails all day long and not ever accomplish anything meaningful.
Exactly. And so check why is that person here and what is that person contributing? What do I expect? And is it happening? Yes or no? And if it's not happening, something needs to change, right? And if it's happening, then I really don't have to care if that person is walking her dog 50 times a day or not. Like, it's none of my business. The person is getting the job done. Let the person work in line with their preferences. So I think we need to switch to outcome culture. We also need to understand that people have different optimal stress points. So people will reach the best performance under different circumstances. So rather than creating a high stress environment for everyone, we need to accept that for some people, we need to lower stress levels in order to really tap into their performance. And for other people, we need to increase it. And that is something I don't see being talked about because people don't understand that when you are easily stressed, it doesn't mean that you're a low performer. It only means that you have a different optimal stress point. So that's another thing. And then I think, of course, we need to understand that some people are introverts, some people are extroverts. And so for some jobs, we require a lot of presence, a lot of dinner networking, a lot of physical presence and human interaction 24/7. And that will not work for introverts. While they might be the ones with the smartest brain in the
Mm-hmm.
room, but they will quit because they don't want to go to all those dreadful dinners. And so it's important to understand that some people will add value at those networking social events, and then they enjoy it, let them do that. And other people reach their performance with silence and solitude. So allow them to say no thanks. I'm not interested in like coming to this dinner. Which is hard because, leaders have so many obligations and so many things you're supposed to do. And I think we need more flexibility and an understanding that your performance is not linked to how many hours you show up. It should be linked to what's the outcome of your actions.
Yeah, I think it could really transform so many companies. But I think the challenge here for a lot of companies, at least from my experience, is a lot of companies find it hard to define what's the outcome for people, especially I believe when you have a lot of people, right? And like, what's the outcome for every single person on their job? Maybe that's the struggle for a lot of companies. Did you ever find like a hack to help companies to do it faster? Like, what's the what done looks like, and job well done for any specific person?
Well, I guess that's why you have those meetings where you define goals and KPIs. And I think that's what you should, if you're managing a country, if you're a country head for a country and your cost is going up and your profit is going down, I would say it's pretty easy to see that it's not going well. So I would say, it's not so hard. You just have to see, is that person, is that business going well? Is that person producing something that's valuable? Are people doing well under this person? I think it's not that hard to measure. And I think rather than defining 55 criteria, which I sometimes see on those measurements, it's like a very complex 50 pages long questionnaire to write people. They completely miss the mark because nobody thinks about those 55 criteria every day. I think it's not how our brain works. It's way too complex. So I think just define 2 to 3 things.
Yeah, to optimize for, right?
Yeah, and to say, here's what I expect of you. You should be able to summarize it in 3 points. And if you can't summarize it in 3 points, you may ask yourself, why is that person even here if I can't summarize in 3 points what I expect? So I think it's not that difficult, and we're making life complicated with all these tools. And, HR is developing all these measurement tools. We have defined those. We have those 20 values and we translated them and those 40 behaviors. And now we're going to measure those. It doesn't work. People just fill out those papers because they have to. But I think if you can't summarize it in 3 points, you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. So I think.
You're so right. It's like the greatest scientists always, thinkers say, like, if you can't explain it simply, you probably don't understand it yourself, what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not that difficult. We're just making it difficult because they're like these lofty ambitions of quantifying everything when in reality, our brain can't handle so much complexity. So in the end, people are overwhelmed with these questionnaires and these different criteria. I think simplifying goes a long way. So if you can make it simple, you don't have that problem anymore.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. Back to productivity, what I'd like to touch upon is we all like to be productive, right? And companies want to have productive teams and people. And in the book, you talk about flow, right? And that it's one of the the most productive state when the productivity can be 5x, 500% more when we're really in our zone. What I found interesting about the way you described it, and I found it empowering because it's also very simple, is that you talk about, fun and fear. And those are basically the things you kind of need to figure out for each individual person to make them or help them or even, ourselves perform at our best. Can you expand more of that, like fun and fear, and how combining those can help people to perform, to do their best, whatever they do.
Yeah. In the flow state, people can be up to 5 times more productive. And it all comes down to having the right mix of fun, fear, and focus. And when people have the right level of fear, their brains produce dopamine and they can think so much better and faster. When people have the right level of fear, not too much, not too little, they should be slightly over challenged. That's when the brain releases noradrenaline. So that's another thing to take into account. And when you have the right level of fun and the right level of fear, focus follows naturally. And then you get that acetylcholine release in the brain. And what that leads to is you can manipulate those 3 points, both for yourself and in others. Like, for example, now in our conversation, we can ask ourselves, how much fun am I having here right now? Is it interesting? Or as a listener, is it, is there something new for me here? Then you can ask yourself, is it too slow? Is it too quick? Is it too boring, or is it stressing me out? So it should be at that level where you feel you learn something new without being overwhelmed. That's like the sweet spot. And then you stay focused. So it's like a very simple formula to maximize your productivity. And in my book, I outline a bit like, how can you get the right level of fun? How can you find the right level of fear? And how can you maximize your focus? And when all 3 of them come together, you can do in one day what other people do in a week. And I think that's pretty amazing.
That's amazing. And, for me, what was insightful is that I didn't actually think about that much. Is that for each neurosignature, each different brain, it's different. Like, what's fear, what's, fun, like how to achieve maximum focus. It's not like we all find the same things fun, right? Or feared by, have achieved certain amount of fear by exactly the same thing. So could you talk a little bit more about that, and how very often we do these mistakes? We assume fun is the same for everyone.
Yeah. So I think it's so important to understand that my fun is not your fun. So if you love, spending time in nature and going hiking, and maybe I love being in a city and just having cocktails with friends, we have very different understanding of what fun means to us. And so it's important as a leader, but even when working with other people, to understand that what you think is fun is not fun to others. I remember one job where they organized this annual meeting for everyone. And it was like a 3-day restaurant and museum and boat tour. And I hated every single second of it. To me, it was just like, when is it finally over? Like, I found it exhausting. I found it overwhelming. I found it annoying. I was just like, at the end of those 3 days, I felt like a wreck. When in reality, the person who organized it was thriving and enjoyed it, and was like saying like, oh, isn't it beautiful? Isn't it fun? Isn't it the coolest thing ever? And, some people loved it and some people really, really hated it. And so I think there was a lack of understanding that people are different, and that what you think is a great thing, how to spend your time, is a nightmare for someone else. And to be a bit more mindful and give people a bit more options to, for example, not attend the full program unless they really want to, I think would make life so much better, because more is not always more.
Yeah.
And so it's important to find the fun and the fear and the focus that works for you.
So I think, fun, fear, focus, it's important also to understand that can be different for people, because then maybe we need to allow people more freedom to craft their work, right? And to define for themselves the degree of that fun and fear, and how to organize perhaps their work and workplace for optimal focus. So we don't kind of force everyone to the same work mode, right? That for some might be a perfect balance of all of this fun, fear, and focus, and for some might be completely disaster, right? Missing the point.
Exactly. And I think there are exercises you can do to find that out. You can, I have a workbook that comes with my book, like a digital workbook. So for example, if people pre-order my book, or order my book, they can get it from my website. And I have an exercise in there where you make a list of your daily tasks or situations you find yourself in, and then you can map that onto the fun, free, and focus curve that I have in the book. And then you can actually see, what should I do more of and what should I do less of? And I think that's very valuable to make that assessment in your life. Which kind of tasks should I let go of because they really annoy me? And what kind of situations should I seek more of because they energize me? To get that understanding of it's deeply personal. And so you need to find what puts you into flow. That's your sweet spot, and that's your strength, and that's where you should go.
Yeah, and that's, I believe, very important because, as you mentioned in the book, and right now, people can achieve so much more when they are in that state of personal flow more often. One last question, I'd love you to expand more before we wrap up, is lifestyle as a whole, right? Exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress management. You dedicated a whole chapter, and I think in every chapter there is a bit of that, right? Emphasizing the importance of that. Can you expand a little more on why is it important? Because in workplace, it's used to be maybe now, better, but not that much better everywhere. It used to be that it didn't matter. It's your personal business, what you do with your, lifestyle, your exercise, your nutrition, your sleep, etc. And I think that's very wrong. And yeah, can you expand more on that? Your thoughts and what you recommend companies here to do, or individuals, why they should pay attention?
What we need to understand is that the brain and the body are connected. So when you take good care of your body, you take good care of your brain. For example, dancing is twice as effective in reading and preventing dementia. So that is a simple example. Or, walking boosts creativity by 60%. And what this means is that when you boost your body, you boost your brain. It's as simple as that. And that's why we need sport, sleep, snacks, and sunshine in order to really maximize our brain performance.
Yeah. And do you have maybe a short action plan for people to start taking care of their body, to take care of their brain better? What is a person needs to do in a day, or at least think about things in lifestyle, nutrition, in order to try to maximize their brain performance?
Yeah, so first of all, we need to move more. It's obvious people have a much too sedentary life. So it's important that we don't sit all day long. Sitting is the new smoking. So just find simple ways to get a little bit more exercise into your life. And I personally think we could even integrate that into the workplace. So putting up small exercise tools so that people can work out during their lunch break, or just take a quick break between Zoom calls to lift a couple of weights. That is so simple to do, and it has such a huge impact. Then the other one, I think, is, exposing yourself to sunlight in the morning, in the evening, and maybe getting very good light into the office, or even circadian lights you can work with in order to get yourself the right light exposure to the time of the day, because our brains become much more alert when we get the right kind of wavelength at certain times of the day. So that has a huge impact on cortisol levels, dopamine, serotonin, our neurotransmitters. And last but not least, of course, all the neurotransmitters we need to perform well are built from our food in the end. So if you just eat processed food all day, that will drive brain inflammation. And so going more natural with, organic, raw, simple meals. It doesn't have to be super fancy, but just getting the right carbs, a good mix of proteins, high quality fats, and, a lot of plants will go a long way. I have some examples for, brain food in my book specifically, but it's all about avoiding processed food and going more natural with your choices. So these are 3 simple things you can do to protect your brain health.
Yeah, and that's an amazing trio. When I give talks on like brain performance, it's lifestyle nutrition. That's what I talk about a lot. I have a mini question about chocolate. You mentioned chocolate specifically in your book. I think in both of your books, right? And I always recommend it to people. I'm like, eat it every day, and people look at me weirdly because I'm also a nutritionist. Like, chocolate, seriously? So can you explain like what does chocolate do for the brain?
Well, chocolate boosts your dopamine levels. So that's a really good thing. It really boosts your mood. I think that's one easy way to go. And then, of course, if you go for dark chocolate, that's the best way to go because it has less sugar and more of the good nutrients. So I personally love chocolate. And of course, I love the news that it's good for the brain and not bad for you. Of course, you shouldn't take the more high quality chocolate you eat, the better for you. So it's not about eating tons of sugar. We know that's bad. But if you go for the darker chocolate variation, that's really, really good for your brain. And there has even been shown that it can enhance cognitive performance. So I love to eat dark chocolate. I just make sure I don't eat it closer to going to sleep because it can also have a similar impact to coffee. I think that's important to keep into mind that it can really wake you up. I think, how do I put this? Lots of these lifestyle optimization things make your life worse, not better. Because when you deprive yourself from anything that's good and fun, what's life worth living for? Like if you just, starve yourself and deprive yourself, I don't think that's a very happy life. So I love the news that chocolate is actually good for your brain. And that's why I probably have it in both books because I love to give people that good news.
Yeah, and chocolate, also read somewhere that it stimulates all the like neurotransmitters that are like major ones in flow states. And I'm like, yeah, I'm eating all the chocolate.
Yeah.
The right one, of course. For me, I personally go for 100%. So I love that.
Yeah.
And it's such an important point that you mentioned that when you take care of your brain, that you make it healthy and happy, like truly taking care of your brain's needs and your neurosignatures needs, right? Life starts to feel good. Like no matter whether you're at work or at home, it just feels good and meaningful. I think, that's a lot of people need to understand that. I personally believe that when you take care of your brain holistically, that's where you get a meaningful and fun life experience.
Yeah, and you just live at a higher level. We know that so many people are stressed and so many people are bored. And when you tap into your unique neurosignature, you do not only reach a better performance, you also reach well-being. And you're closer aligned with the purpose in your life and you find your passion. So I think it's really a message of getting the best of both worlds of performance and well-being. And that will lead to happiness.
Yeah, and your book is all about that. I'm talking about the brain-friendly workspace. I recommend both books personally because they have all different aspects of brain health and brain performance and optimization. In books you talk a lot about stress and how there is good stress and bad stress, short and long stress. So it's like both books combined. Again, I would recommend everyone to read both of them. Like the last question, Frederica, and I respect your time, and even though I can talk to you for ages, I understand you have other life commitments. So what are some places, your work, where you want people to go mostly to, get all the value and figure out how to take care of their brain at work and at home, and perhaps for leaders also, right, to organize workplace better? Like, where do you want people to go to explore your work?
I think the easiest way to find my work is, first of all, in my books. So the Brain Friendly Workplace and The Leading Brain. But I think my newest book, The Brain Friendly Workplace, just gets the newest insights from neuroscience. And then my website, fredericafabricius.com, because I have a brain-friendly newsletter you can sign up to. So you get brain-friendly tips every month. And I also have a blog where I write about my news thinking. So I think those are obvious. And then, of course, I'm on social media as well. So if you are anywhere in social media, you can find me there as well.
Hmm. And those social media links probably people can find on your website or no?
Yeah, they can find
Okay.
on my website. And if you're on some platform and you
Yeah.
look for my name, you're going to find me there.
Yeah, so I highly encourage people to go and check out your work and subscribe to everything. I'm definitely going to do that. And yeah, thank you, Frederica, for your time and so much value, on this podcast with this touched on it. Yeah, highly recommend people to check out your work. And thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your work.
Thank you so much, Angela. It's been my pleasure.